Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:07 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Ian Pryor joins us from America First Legal at 4:30. We'll talk about 5 Virginia school districts who are now in for some scrutiny from the federal government because they're flagrantly violating federal law. It's about time for some accountability, don't you think? Ian joins us coming up. Andy Harris, congressman from Maryland, will be with us at 5 o'clock. And then former FBI agent Kyle Serafin is here at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Cindy is calling in from Bethesda, Maryland, right now on line 2. Cindy, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Well, hey, Vince, good afternoon to you, too. So I need to know, am I missing? I've been at work all day. Am I missing out on a delicious protest today against Musk? Because I just saw some people getting on the Grosvenor Metro as I was getting off to signs that say "Deport Musk." So I need to know if I'm missing out. Yeah, deport Musk.
Well, you're doing some great on-the-ground reporting for me. I wasn't aware of the Deport Musk rally. Now, here's one of the problems with that particular arrangement. Elon Musk is an American citizen. Do these people know that? We can't deport him.
Probably not. They probably don't. They just think they're going to just kick him out.
So let me understand their logic, Cindy. We can't deport illegal aliens who are here in violation of our laws, but we should deport American citizens? This is the state of the American left now?
Absolutely.
So you were on the Metro. You were just on the Metro. Did you see any signs on the Metro that said you're not allowed to sit here in honor of Rosa Parks?
They're actually on the local ride-on buses. Yes, I have seen those signs. Not on the Metro, but on the local ride-on bus.
Okay, so the news that I'm seeing today is that Metro reserved a seat on every bus and train today to pay tribute to Rosa Parks. This would be her 112th birthday. And, Cindy, here's my problem with this particular arrangement, because I don't think Rosa Parks fought to block off seats in the Metro or on the bus. I believe she was fighting for people to have access to those seats. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. I'm just making sure. All right, Cindy, thank you. Thank you for your reporting.
Thanks, Vince.
I appreciate that. There's Cindy. Cindy's out there watching. The left wants to deport American citizens now because they're handling everything really, really well. But, I ask about this Rosa Parks thing because there's a picture going around X today of a young man wearing his earbuds. He's a white fellow. That's important for this story. And he's got a suit on. He's got his leather briefcase in his lap, and he's sitting in the chair that Metro has designated as "you're not allowed to sit here" in honor of Rosa Parks, which is a complete inversion of the Rosa Parks story. We don't block off seats from people who'd like to sit down on public transportation. I believe that's the exact opposite of what Rosa Parks was fighting for. So, of course, that's why Metro is doing it today. If Rosa Parks somehow rose from the grave and got on that Metro today, she would not be allowed to sit in the seat that they have blocked off. That's really, really insane. So there we go. That's what D.C. is up to. Let's see. Lois is calling in from Purcellville now on line 3. Hello, Lois. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Wonderful show as always.
Thank you.
I'm so happy. Thank you for having me. I just had a real quick comment, which is the late AOC, who doesn't know what a waste disposal unit looks like, criticizes a man who sends people to space and kids who were geniuses. But it's okay to put a man with late-stage dementia in as president.
Yeah, late-stage dementia. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had a vegetable as president of the United States. AOC is mad that one of the smartest human beings on earth is taking a close look at how the government spends our money. And she says, here, let me just, so people can hear this, Lois, if they missed it earlier.
This dude is probably one of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met or seen or witnessed.
Yeah. So AOC, as you've appropriately reminded us, has never encountered a garbage disposal before. She was shocked by how that modern piece of technology works.
Yeah. So, And everybody wants to listen to a bartender. So
I like
you can't tell your
bartenders.
stories for them.
Yeah, bartenders
I
are
do
great,
too.
but there's something wrong with her, I think specifically.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my giggle with you. So that
Thank
was
you.
my giggle for the day.
Well, you shared it with the
Take
rest
care.
of us.
Wonderful
Thank you,
show
Lois.
again.
Thank you very much. Lois from
Bye-bye.
Purcellville, pointing out that AOC is not as smart as she pretends to be, which is true. Hey, the USAID employees are freaking out. All these federal government employees who have been taking your money and using it to advance left-wing causes and hoping you'd never notice, they're absolutely freaking out. ABC conducted an interview with a USAID employee this week, talking about what that experience was like when the American voters finally started taking an inventory of what's going on inside that office. Here's how that went.
But Elon Musk's influence is sweeping throughout the administration. It was late last week that the DOGE team showed up at USAID offices in Washington and demanded access. USAID employee Christina Dry described the scene.
DOGE was in the building. We started.
Describe the scene like they were responding to some sort of tragedy. Describe the scene.
Christina Dry described the scene.
DOGE was in the building. We took down our pride flags. I took out any books I felt would be incriminating. No one was talking. We heard they started taking transcripts automatically.
We took down our pride flags. Why'd you take the pride flag down? I thought you were proud of it. Why'd you take the pride flag down? And then we took down books we thought would be incriminating. I saw Elon Musk was asking earlier, what books could she be referring to? Is the Communist Manifesto being hidden from the DOGE employees who are coming to check what the government's been doing with your money?
All of our Google Meets. They unplugged the news in the little kitchen galleys. It didn't feel good. And then Saturday, all of the websites went down, and then I lost complete access to my computer.
As soon as the American people tried to audit what we were doing, we ran in and we orchestrated the quickest cover-up we could possibly conjure. We took down all of our political paraphernalia, all of our garbage propaganda. We were removing books that we didn't want the American people to know that we had. Boy, it sure sounds like they have something to hide. Again, if they were proud of all of this, why would they be yanking all of it down? And yet, they are. Bill Gates was on NBC this morning. You know, Bill Gates, the Microsoft guy? He was on NBC, the guy who's trying to block out the sun. The one who had one too many visits with Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, he was on NBC this morning talking about Elon Musk and DOGE and USAID.
Knowing Elon as you do, are you comfortable with the amount of power he's wielding inside the U.S. government right now?
Well, I admire the great private sector stuff he's done. You know, SpaceX, Tesla, both amazing companies. I think in the case of USAID, he doesn't appreciate the phenomenal work that goes on. It's not partisan work. It's nutrition.
He doesn't appreciate the phenomenal work that the USAID has been doing. Transgender comic books in Lima, Peru, super important work. Funding the EcoHealth Alliance and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This is very important work, says Bill Gates. He just doesn't understand it, this Elon.
Appreciate the phenomenal work that goes on. It's not partisan work. It's nutrition. It's avoiding.
He says it's beyond repair.
Nutrition.
Well, I give billions of dollars to the same thing that USAID does. I go out in the field and study these things. I hire.
Well, maybe we should investigate you.
Scientists, and so I think if he really knew the work there, he wouldn't be telling 10,000 people not to come and do that work.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. That's they've been doing such noble work, and it's a real shame that we're going to put an end to funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology. What a dumpster fire. How many countries has USAID been involved in destabilizing? How has that helped the planet? Let's stop that. $50 billion in spending each year. Federal employees at various agencies are all panicking that the American voter has a say-so in how the federal government operates. Over at a website called The Bulwark, there's a fellow called Sam Stein. He used to be a Huffington Post guy. He's now at The Bulwark. And he says he's been getting all these messages from various federal employees, including one woman at the CDC, talking about it's been really tough to honor President Trump's executive order that declares there are only two sexes, male and female. This has been it's created chaos at the Centers for Disease Control, which is supposed to be staffed by people who are interested in science and health. They're confused by this executive order that declares that there are literally only two sexes.
Another person contacted me, and this I don't feel totally comfortable putting up the full email, but you know what? Why not? It was an employee at the Centers of Disease Control Prevention. They noted that they got the email from the administration, and they were tasked with removing all references to gender identification under the guise that it was going to defend women.
He did air quotes as he said that, defend women. Of course, it actually does defend women. I'm doing air quotes now. It does do that. It does do that very thing. It establishes that men are not women and should not be treated as such at the expense of women.
They were instructed to remove the word gender and replace it with sex. And it created this really awkward situation. This employee wrote, "My manager is an LGBT white woman married to a woman. Yesterday, she was crying in a meeting while at the same time instructing us to follow these orders." Yeah, that was tough. Imagine your manager who is being forced to read these instructions, more or less kind of downgrading or erasing her existence and being like, well, this is now the policy. And she's just sitting there and you're standing there and crying.
Wait. So the lesbian supervisor at the CDC is reading instructions that say that sex is a real thing and we should respect that and we shouldn't pretend otherwise. Okay? Are you with me so far? Lesbian lady has to read this instruction that says men and women are distinct categories and we can't pretend anymore that they aren't. And Sam Stein says that she's being forced to, quote, downgrade or erase her existence. Couple of basic points here. What does being a lesbian have to do with the fact that she's saying that sex is a real category? What in the world does that have to do with anything? It literally has nothing to do with it. This is, once again, the left's attempt to shoehorn gender delusions into sexual preference. This is, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's completely incoherent. The lesbian lady is, quote, erasing her existence. And by the way, let's back up. If the lady was under the delusion that she was a man, and thereby creating a straight relationship for her in her own mind, just to be clear. But if she was under the delusion that she was a man, reading an instruction that says sex is real is not, quote, erasing her existence. She still exists. She's still a human being. And she's still actually a woman. This is lunacy. And Sam Stein reading it, just imagine how difficult that must be, reading this, having to acknowledge reality. Oh, man, that really erases her existence. Because what? Because she's a lesbian woman reading out a real thing? It doesn't erase her existence at all. We know about her. You just told us about her. She's totally real. Well, unless they lied, unless this person lied to Sam Stein, maybe she's not real. I can't get over this Rosa Parks Day thing that the Metro is doing today. You know, I looked it up. Between buses and rail cars, Metro has approximately 2,700 of them. Now, of course, they're not all fully operational right now, I guarantee you. But let's just assume for a moment they were. That means today they blocked 2,700 passengers at any one moment from sitting down on public transportation to, quote, honor Rosa Parks. Oh, the left is chock full of this most ridiculous people ever. All right, let's see here. I've got Frank calling in from Arlington, wants to talk about USAID, line 7. Hey, Frank, you're on the Vince Coglianese show. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi, Vince. Can you hear me?
I hear you great, Frank.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I'm a 45 years plus professional in the foreign aid industry. So my organization has been receiving USAID funds, grants, and contracts over many years. Our particular focus has been on the development of the local private sector so that the local economies and the people can become self-sufficient and basically free themselves up with the dependence on foreign aid. But I'd just like to say that, this type of approach is usually discouraged by the aid agencies. who prefer to give out free stuff. They prefer to perpetuate these poverty and dependency. Rather than support local agricultural input supply companies who are selling seed and fertilizer to farmers, or
so when you say aid agencies, Frank,
sector approach.
Hey, Frank, when you say aid agencies, so you're talking first and foremost about USAID. Who else are you talking about?
Yeah, USAID and also European donors, as well as some of the big foundations. Some of the Gates Foundation, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, all these folks, they tend to have, their employees tend to be very left-leaning, and they support, basically they often try to support alternative forms of market intermediaries like cooperatives, or they come up with these entities that they think are going to be more fair to farmers or to people, but in fact, they basically distort the markets, and then when their donor money stops, then all those things go away, and it creates more problems than they began with.
Yeah, so they come up with like these communist market operations that they don't actually help the private economy at all in these countries they're supposed to be helping.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these huge projects that have come about, used to be a $5 million project for 5 years, used to be kind of standard course. Now, easily it's a $50 million project, which creates all sorts of terrible incentives for everybody involved.
Yeah, wow. So, Frank, just to be clear, you haven't worked on transgender comic books in Peru, right?
No, but you see this stuff, and you see the crazy climate policies that ruin Sri Lanka, for example.
Yes.
You actually see those type of things being promoted as well. So, there's some good stuff that happens with the private sector, but there's a ton of this stuff.
Yeah, man, we got to clean things up. Right from a guy who's worked in this entire scheme. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that call. All right, hold on. Coming up, I've got Ian Pryor. We're going to take a close look at some Virginia school districts who are just trampling all over federal law. Hey, good afternoon to you. 435 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Congressman Andy Harris joins us at the top of the hour from Maryland's Fighting First Congressional District. We'll chat with him about what's going on in Congress right now, including President Trump's nominees advancing in the United States Senate, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard. We've got a lot to discuss. And then Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, will be with us at 5:30. As we have now FBI employees filing a class action lawsuit against the federal government for daring to hold them accountable. It's all ahead. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, there is a new sheriff in town. President Trump has been very busy trying to execute on all fronts the agenda that the American people voted for. But what does that mean for getting control of the out-of-control schools in our country, in particular in places like Northern Virginia, which have administrators and leaders who care very little about federal law, who care very little about protecting the rights of women, who care very little about the fact that they keep basically, they're like straight up releasing statements in the past week or two saying that they're going to protect illegal immigration at all costs. Joining us now to discuss all this, Ian Pryor. He's a senior advisor at America First Legal, a great patriot, a Virginia resident. Ian, good to have you with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Vince.
Okay, so tell us what you and America First Legal are up to right now.
Well, yesterday we sent a letter to the United States Department of Education's Civil Rights Office, requesting investigations into 5 Northern Virginia school districts for violating Title IX and not being compliant with the president's most recent executive orders. And those school systems are Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William County. And ultimately what it boils down to is that all of these schools have policies that say you can use the bathroom of the sex you identify with, not your biological sex, but the sex that you woke up that day deciding you were going to be. So if you're a boy and you feel that day you're going to be a girl, you can go to the girls' room. And if the girl feels uncomfortable with it, well, she's got to go over to the private restroom. Very similar to, what we've been doing in Fairfax with our lawsuit against Fairfax County. And, it's our position, and it's pretty clear from both the executive orders from President Trump and the recent Dear Colleague letter released last Friday by the Department of Education, that Title IX is there to protect people on the basis of biological sex.
Yes.
These policies do the exact opposite of that. There is no way that you can protect somebody's sex-based rights based on biological sex and gender identity at the same time. It is completely incompatible. So we're hoping that the Department of Education looks at these things, investigates, and takes action, because ultimately, if these school districts don't comply, well, they're not going to get their federal money anymore.
Yeah, rightfully so. So meanwhile, what's actually happening in these school districts are like, Arlington, of course, had a registered sex offender, an adult male, just in the girls' locker room at one of the local high schools. So and everyone's acting like, oh, well, it was just a small mistake. No, it's not a mistake at all. It's a total violation of the trust that the residents of Virginia place in their school systems.
Yeah, we were all told reliably so that this never happens, right? No, it's not. And I believe it was Scott Ziegler, the former superintendent of Loudoun County Public Schools, says, the trans predator does not exist. He said that during that fateful meeting, at least fateful for him. Look, I don't know if this guy in Arlington was transgender or if he was just a sex predator trying to game the system, a system that Arlington County Public Schools laid out a red carpet for him to abuse. But that's what happens, and that's what these policies do. They defy reality, they defy science, they defy biology, and instead, as I've said, they cater to this idea of gender ideology, which was, dreamed up by somebody, on a 72-hour LSD trip.
Yeah, it's really rough. So your complaint, your legal complaint to the Department of Education to launch these investigations into 5 Virginia school districts, since we have a change of leadership and the Department of Education is far more likely to take this up now, what are you expecting, Ian Pryor?
Well, and, look, based on, there's a couple of things that have really set the groundwork for this, in addition to President Trump's executive orders and, obviously having a new sheriff in town that's going to view Title IX as it was meant to be viewed, which is to protect on the basis of biological sex. You had winding through the courts over the past, 6 months, all these cases seeking to enjoin the Biden administration's Title IX rule, which basically said, well, sex means gender identity. Well, that got all the way up to the Supreme Court. It was enjoined in, 26, 27 states. It's now been nationally enjoined, so nobody can implement it. But it gets up to the Supreme Court, and what the Supreme Court did was there was a 5-4 decision in which they upheld the injunction. And the reason why it was 5-4, the 4 dissenting justices said, well, look, we don't believe we should enjoin the entire Title IX rule, just the part related to gender identity. So what you had was all 9 justices of the Supreme Court saying, yes, sex does not mean gender identity, right? And so if the Supreme Court is willing to uphold an injunction on that basis, then certainly that is the law, that is the supreme law of the land. And to the extent these schools want to defy it, they're going to pay a price.
Do you think they'll continue to defy it? Do you think any of these school systems are nervous about the complaint that you just filed?
Well, I'll tell you what, I heard, and I won't say specifically who, but I heard one superintendent saying something like, $25, $40 million, that's a rounding error in our budgets. Okay, great.
Oh.
So don't take the money.
Oh.
And then what you can do is you can go to your board of supervisors or your delegating authority, and you can go get the money from them, and they'll get it from the taxpayers, and you can tell them why their property tax rates are going up. Well, we'll see how that plays with the community.
That's an arrogant little snippy comment. So it's a rounding error to get $40 million. I know that Fairfax County gets in the vicinity, I think, of $50 million every year from federal taxpayers. And at this moment, none of these counties or school districts, Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William County, none of them seem like they're changing course. And have you seen differently?
No, and in fact, just a few minutes before this call, I tweeted the most recent video that Fairfax County Public Schools is showing its students, and they say, look, you have equitable access to restrooms under 2603. Well, they've changed the language a little bit since last year, but 2603 is the policy that says you get to use whatever bathroom if you're gender expansive or transgender of the sex that you identify with. So they're going to continue to do this until they're investigated and the hammer comes down. And, God forbid they start submitting their federal grants saying they're in compliance with the law, because then they've got a whole nother problem.
So meanwhile, what's happening in Virginia, Ian Pryor? I mean, I know that Governor Youngkin can't abide this. Attorney General Miyares can't abide this. So what is their attitude? What have they done to try and address this issue?
Well, I know that they obviously put out the model policies, and I think some schools have fallen into line. You go to, for example, the West Point school system, right? That's the one that was sued by Peter Flaming. Well, you look at their policies now, and they're in line with the model policies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what you have here is an extension of the swamp in Northern Virginia, and they say, look, we're not concerned with what the governor or the attorney general is going to do. We've got power in the state Senate. We've got power in the House of Delegates. There's no law you can pass, so we're going to keep doing this, and we're going to use Title IX, the Biden administration's Title IX, as our justification for doing it. Well, that's now gone. So it really is now at the level of the federal government to be able to go in there and say, well, what we can do is we can take your money, and then you can go explain it, right?
Yes.
So all these superintendents, all they care about is their budgets, right? They will play along with whichever special interest group gets them, the most money they can get that they can distribute to all their cronies. Well, hopefully that gravy train comes to an end.
This is why. So is Title IX limited to just a kind of a monetary penalty? In other words, they remove federal funding, or can we pursue criminal charges against people who are abusing children?
Well, it's interesting because some of the things are related to Title IX. For example, the bathroom policy, right? But the pronoun policy, well, that's a constitutional issue. That's not necessarily written into Title IX. It's certainly been part of the executive orders. Not telling parents if children are being, requiring to be called by a different pronoun or use a different bathroom. Well, that's a 14th Amendment issue, right? So now you're getting out of probably the jurisdiction of the Department of Education, and now you're getting into the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice. So this is sort of, and that's one of the things that the EOs from President Trump is directing, all the departments, the cabinets, the agencies to really work together to figure out how to start enforcing this, because some of this stuff might be Department of Education, some of it might be the Department of Justice.
I do think that President Trump has an opportunity here to send shockwaves through the abusive school systems all around the country that are similar to Northern Virginia. And I have been saying, and I think he should do this, I really do, and I hope he takes me up on this idea. He should go to a school board meeting. He should go to one of these school boards, show up at the school board meeting, use the public comment period, and speak directly to this school board, or at the very least, have a press conference right there at the school board meeting, and condemn the school board for the abuse of these children in that district, and announce right there on the spot that he is stripping, let's say in Fairfax County, $50 million in federal funding. It is gone. Poof. I mean, how do the school boards react to that if he brings the attention of the world directly to these districts?
Yeah, I mean, that would be something. And we talk about here, Northern Virginia, but you can also throw Montgomery County Public Schools into that mix.
Yeah.
Right around Washington, D.C., this is where the federal workforce is. This is where all these ideas are dreamed up and tested, which is why Northern Virginia is such a critical point for enforcement. Because this is where these things have been tested, going back to, I think, 2015 in Fairfax. So, yes, this is a place to make a stand, and I think, President Trump can absolutely do that.
Yeah, they're moving so fast. This is one of those situations where, a lot of legal groups try and file letters to have things investigated, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I have a feeling that this is one of those unique circumstances where there's a high probability that the Trump administration is going to follow up on your request, and I really hope they do, Ian Pryor. I think this is a big moment.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Think about all those people that are going to work in the Trump administration, whether it's the Department of Education, Department of Justice. Where do you think they live? Where do you think they send their kids to school?
Yeah.
You don't think that they're sitting here seeing this stuff as well? Of course they are.
Yes.
So it's no longer just, you've got your Biden administration people that are perfectly happy with, having boys and girls sports and locker rooms and restrooms, and then implement that stuff nationwide. No, it's a totally different ballgame here with people that are committed to actual reality.
Yep. And even if they don't have kids in those government schools, they're paying for them, and their dollars are being used to abuse children, which is horrific. Hey, Ian Pryor, thank you very much with America First Legal. Thanks for always being on the right side of all these fights.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Good to chat with Ian. Let me see. I've got Rick calling in from Manassas now, line 2. Hello, Rick. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, I got to tell you, that's the most genius suggestion you've had in 2 years. Trump should go to Loudoun County, announce he's yanking all that money from Loudoun County school system, show up at the meeting at the last minute, and he ought to just walk in and pretend he's driving by going to Camp David. This is like great.
I think so. I'd make it a spectacle. I mean, and the thing is, Loudoun County is a perfect example. You have these school boards, these out of control left-wing school boards, who try and block people from being able to meaningfully contribute to the hearing.
You hit the nail on the head. This was what got Youngkin elected. When Loudoun County got on their transgendered BS and they arrested that father.
Yep.
Absolutely genius suggestion. I hope he takes shots.
I hope he does it too. Thanks, Rick. I think it would have a very positive effect for the country. It would send a warning shot to school boards everywhere. We'll see. We'll see what they do. Let me see. D is calling in from Fairfax County, line 1. D, you are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Hi, Vince. How are you?
I'm good, D.
Good. Just really quickly, I grew up in Fairfax County Public Schools. I raised my children in Fairfax County Public Schools. They bear absolutely no resemblance to what they were. In my opinion, anybody in the public education system, indoctrination system, who would endorse this abuse, I'm going to, borrow your terminology from a moment ago. Our tax dollars are being used to abuse our children.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with that. And I don't think any person, any teacher, administrator, counselor, quote unquote, psychologist, quote unquote, has any business being approximate a child. Anybody who would endorse this.
It's so awful, D. And D, here's the other piece. When in this indictment of the leadership of Fairfax County and some of the people who work in the school district there, it doesn't extend to every single person who works in a Fairfax County school. There are legitimately wonderful teachers. I know some of them who work in some of these government schools. And you know what's happening to those teachers? They're being driven out of the school system by this insanity.
That is correct. You absolutely have captured it right there. They are being driven out.
It's a total disgrace.
They're non-conforming, i.e., they actually care about children and they wouldn't, involve themselves in this kind of activity or the promotion of this philosophy.
That's right. And they're subjected to struggle sessions until they're chased out of the school system, which is that's as awful as it gets. So the best people, they're leaving. Thank you, D. I appreciate the call.
My pleasure.
All right. Frank's dialing in from Ashburn now, line 2. Hello, Frank. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hello, Vince. Thanks for having me. Thanks for all you do and loving America.
Thank you, Frank.
My quick comment is that you're never going to make things really better in this country till you take school systems back. Teachers have your kids the majority of the day. How many people work a 10, 12-hour day to come home? The teachers have their ear the whole day. And it's never going to get better unless you take the leftist mentality out of the schools, start teaching unique American history, our Constitution. How much do they even study that in school at all?
Right.
You got to get rid of the crazies before you can make anything better.
Yeah, that's for sure, especially in an environment where nobody can read, Frank. We just got the nation's report card last week. 33% of all 8th graders, I think it was 8th, right? There's both 4th and 8th graders that had trouble, but 8th graders, 33% of them are functionally illiterate, meaning if they can understand the words, they can't understand the content. They don't know, they can't put the arguments together. They have no idea what they just consumed. That's 33% of the nation's 8th graders. So let's get back to basics.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate the call. Yeah, there's a lot of, as you point out, there's a lot of nonsense being focused on. Let's go back to literacy, math, American history, and we shouldn't be teaching self-loathing, either about our country or about your skin color or about your gender or anything else. Coming up, we're going to chat with Congressman Andy Harris from Maryland and then former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin. A lot going on in the news. We'll hit it with the two gentlemen next.